Well, hey everybody listening. I'm Lockwood Barr. I'm a California raised but currently Nashville based country music artist and banjo picker. And even though I was raised on the West Coast, I have a lot of Southern blood, which is kind of how I ended up out here. But I'm very excited to be here this morning.
Awesome. My name is the 415 Fortune, and I am also a producer and engineer and inspiring filmmaker and all of the above. I'm also from California as well. Recently got here to Nashville in November of last year. So I'm excited to be here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nashville's kind of amazing in that way. Like has been nicknamed in the past the Little Big Town. And I think something really special about the city is that yes, there have been some heartbreaking moments where you see buildings getting knocked down that were historical and things like that. Life is certainly changing as the city grows, but something that remains that Nashville seems to hold on to is sort of the small town attitude of how people connect, how people take care of each other,
Right.
how people support each other, sort of the nature of collaboration, down to the fact that it's like when you go into a co-writing room, it's the rights split evenly. No one's sitting here like, well, I should get 45% because that was my line. It's like if there are 3 people in the room, it's a third. If there are 2 people in the room, you each get 50%. And I think little things like that are just, it's the Nashville way.
Right. Do you feel like when you're in LA, it's similar, or is it a different scenario?
That's a great question. To be honest, I haven't spent enough time, like when I do go to LA or New York or any other art city to do some work, I'm only there for, a week at a time or something like that. And so I'm not sure I can answer that question, but what I will say is I think that being in Nashville now for as many years as I have been, I think it almost is irrelevant because now the Nashville way of life is so much a part of my soul that I just carry that with me.
Right.
And so I feel like I feel almost empowered. Like I could leave Nashville. I don't want to because I love Nashville. But I feel that I could leave Nashville at this point and carry that energy with me because it's enough now ingrained into me that wherever I do end up, I would be able to find people that had that collaborative, supportive, small town family nature to them.
Right.
But I think with Nashville, it's just so built in that it almost knocks you over the head.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
yeah.
What drew you to Nashville?
Well, I came out here in December of 2019. My buddy owns a farm in Columbia.
Amazing.
And he called me. I was, I really was trying to get away from the hustle and bustle so much of just daily life and grinding and being, right outside of San Francisco. It's busy. It's like, it's just like LA, right? So it's busy, and I really needed to slow down a little bit and to kind of get my gears on a different switch. So, I went out there and I just fell in love with it. He's got, a ton of land and it's just peaceful. You can wake up in the morning and have your cup of coffee on the deck, and it's just, you can just stare out at the trees and listen to the birds and listen to the cows. And I just love that. So, So that was a big part of why I decided to come here, because I'd been here before and I just fell in love with it.
That's so interesting, because I think something that always attracted me to Nashville was that life in Tennessee just seemed a little bit slower.
Right.
Not any less productive, not any less, the people here are incredibly motivated and really doing amazing things, but life itself, something about it, like people do love their morning coffee. There's even like for me, I'm very grounded in my Christianity, and like I really enjoy being plugged into my church community, and sort of Sunday mornings are sort of off limits for me. Like that's my time to slow down. That's my whatever. And people in Nashville, I've noticed, even if they're not Christian or whatever it is, there's something about this state that sort of brings that out in people. Like everyone sort of takes this collective deep breath. And in a way, I think that makes the work more effective. Like I think to a certain degree, hustling and bustling gets old after a while if you don't have sort of something centering you.
Yeah, and it tears you down. I mean, at least it tore me down mentally and physically.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So was it, kind of to tag on to the spiritual stuff. So has that always been a big part of your life? And
Yeah, great question. I mean, it has, but I think California. So I was raised in the church, and both my parents had been raised in the church, and I think a big part that kept them in the church as adults too was when they moved out to California. They were like, okay, we have 2 baby girls. We don't necessarily have extended family out here. Some extended family ended up arriving, but for the most part, like, it was very much, they were like, okay, we need a community, and we need a community now.
Right.
And one thing that they both knew how to do was like, okay, let's go find a church.
Right.
And so, I was very much raised with sort of the aunts and uncles and grandparents and extended family of the church, where like my parents got sick, someone from the church came and picked us up, looked after us, kind of thing.
That's awesome.
And so it was such a critical part. Christmas dinner every year was with church family, because we'd be with choirs getting ready. So all of that, I mean, I could go on for a million examples. But, California definitely has its own way of life. And even though California is very spiritual and connected, there's a big culture of being out in nature and all of that. It's not, at times I find it to be somewhat spiritually fickle. There's not as much of a spiritual tradition, which, the church is imperfect. And so maybe, if you've been hurt by the church, that might be the ideal situation. But
right.
I think for me, I was always intrigued by how much a part of everybody's life it was whenever I would come out to Tennessee and visit cousins. And I think especially in high school, when I started dealing with raging hormones and finding myself in the world and like all the things that involve being a teenager, I really leaned on what had always been good to me, which was the church and to God. But I was sort of taken aback by how unreceptive other people were to that. Like, and I didn't talk about it a ton, but it was more like I remember being in my high school theater group. We were brainstorming ideas to write a show, and someone brought up religion and, should we discuss this to create some sketches around it and everything like that. And one guy went, well, organized religion corrupts completely. And then someone else said, I think people just turn to religion when they don't have the answers, and so that's an easy way out. And it was like, it very quickly turned from let's brainstorm into religion is the worst and God sucks and isn't real.
Right.
And for me, I think I found it especially offensive because I also came from a church that was very intellectually and academically grounded, where I was like, the experience that I had was not only a beautiful one spiritually and community-wise, but one that encouraged people to ask questions and encouraged people to better themselves and to research. And so for me, I was like, first of all, that's not my experience at all. Second of all, like I know that this wasn't my peers' intentions, but I almost felt like attacked of like, wait a minute, I'm not getting up and yelling at you for being an atheist.
Right,
like, hold the phone.
Yeah.
But again, the church is, Jesus and God are divine, but the church is man-made. And so, I do want to respect that people have been hurt by the church, and that is all relevant. But I just felt like there almost wasn't space for my story in that dialogue. And so I think, when I thought about going into arts and entertainment, I'd also, in addition to growing up very grounded in my faith, I'd grown up very adventurous in the arts. At one point, I really toyed with being a professional tap dancer. And I danced in festivals in New York and did a lot of work in LA. But I think something that kept coming back to me with Nashville was there was just something that felt safe about it. And I think part of it was that
spiritual aspect, yeah.
Where it's so ingrained in daily life.
Right.
And so it really drew me here. And like I sort of touched on a few minutes ago, I think I'm now very grounded in a place in my life where I think I could move anywhere and just bring that with me and know that I would find those people. But I think especially, moving out here when I was 17, I was looking for a very nurturing world and a very nurturing community as I sort of tried to take my first steps in what can often be a very volatile industry.
Right.
So
yeah, somebody had told me an interesting made an interesting statement to me. He said, you know, the church itself is flawed the moment that we walk in there, because we're human and everybody has their own flaws, whether you like to admit it or not.
Right.
So that's interesting. It's very interesting. So how do you spend most of most of your time now as an artist and songwriter and musician? I know what are you spending most of your time on right now?
Right now, so my end goal with my career, I do lots of different things. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I'm a vocalist, and so in addition to being an artist, I love doing utility work and studio sessions and things like that, and writing with all sorts of different people. But at the end of the day, my main goal, like what I want to channel all of that work towards, is being an artist. And so in the absence of touring, my days sort of in this COVID world have really, this is going to sound crazy, but they've really been taken up by social media.
Right.
Because that's where my stage is. That's also where I find incredible opportunities for collaboration. And so I actually started a challenge last month with a group of artists where, not that it changed much of what we were doing, but we essentially created a social media checklist, and we hold each other accountable. Like, hey, yeah, okay, so you met that co-writer on TikTok last week, but did you actually follow up and schedule a co-write with the like that kind of thing, where we kind of help each other. We have a checklist that and we'll text about once a week and be like, how's everyone going? Did you start any cool new projects? Do you feel like your live stream went better, or, whatever it is? So it's a social media world. But does it being, are you with that transition from it being from a face-to-face and in-person kind of business, changing over to more of a online, has that changed any feelings for you about, the direction that you're going and how to attain the goals that you have with being involved more in social media and pushing that avenue more? It's a good question. I'm not sure I'd ever really thought about it. I think it's just continued. The more I lean into it, the more I find myself, I guess, if that sounds crazy, which was honestly my experience with touring. I think one of the things that helped when I got out on the road, especially with being an artist, besides the obvious reasons of honing your skills being on stage, was seeing how people reacted to me and which songs I wrote people actually connected to, or what sound people were like, oh, you remind me of this, or this song is the quintessential Lockwood Barr song, or whatever.
Right.
And so there's definitely been some of that on social media. Like, it's super interesting. Like, I was afraid of sort of losing that feedback and losing that audience connection, but it's absolutely carried over to social media. And so I feel like there's continued growth in that same way.
It's awesome.
And I think then, probably because I was already sort of leaning into that perspective, there's also a spiritual element to it of self-love, where, because I'm so active every day, because that's how you connect with people.
Right.
I've learned to take it less seriously, in a sense, like, which sounds counterintuitive, because on one hand you have to take it more seriously because that's where the connections and the audience and everything is. But at the same time, each individual post or Zoom or whatever it is, because it's every day, each individual post is less important. And so it's kind of helped with the vulnerability state of it. Because one thing that can, in a weird way, because the camera's up close on you, if you're making a duet video on an app with another artist, the camera's up close, and so it almost feels more invasive than being on a stage where you're like 20 feet away from people. Right. And so there's sort of a trust and a vulnerability and sort of this sense of like, yeah, the camera's like right up on you.
Right.
And it is just, even if you're doing a duet video with somebody, the camera's up on both of you.
Right.
And there's something a little bit more vulnerable about it. So that's almost been like a different exercise of like, don't take it too seriously. Just put your craft out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. Not every show you did on the road was perfect. So why does every Instagram video have to be perfect?
Exactly.
So
yeah, and it's tough too, because you're really striving to reach people, and it's time consuming. It's time consuming, and in making sure that you're making the right judgment calls and that sort of thing. and what you're posting about, and all that. And also too, for me, like growing up, it's on the stage, on the live stuff. It's, when I was younger, I remember that going in front of a class and doing, a presentation or something was way harder than it was for me to get on a stage.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that
Do you feel like that is still the case? Are there types of sort of public performance that are easier than others for you?
Totally. I mean, it's, and it's something that I've tried to overcome, I think, throughout the years of me being on stage and doing the shows that I have done. It's a different feeling. And I mean, I guess the best way to describe it is it's just, an uncomfortability being in front of people discussing, like a presentation sort of deal or a business proposal or that sort of thing, versus having, my music playing. Yeah. It's just a totally different vibe, I guess, for me and like inside my soul.
Oh yeah.
So it's way less scary, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, that kind of hits home for me with certain types of social media posts where, people don't these days. Listeners and fans want to see behind the velvet curtain. So they don't just want your music,
right,
or something. They want to hear about you. And in a weird way, that can be scarier.
Yeah.
Like that is like that sense of, like it's a comfort zone to just be like, here's a song I wrote. But then when someone's like, yeah, but like, tell me about you and your life and your fears and whatever. And it's like, oh, whoa, that's first date, bro. I'm not ready for that. Like, it's.
Yeah.
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 Interesting. Yeah. It's a fascinating, I mean, sort of the exercise of being on social media is, I feel like we're going to be studying these effects for it. Like we haven't even begun to unfold what it actually all means.
Right.
Well, I know you were talking about like, part of moving to Nashville was sort of like rebooting sort of your brand. And I think that's something super interesting. I mean, how much do you feel like you're refocusing not only your social media, but who you are as an artist right now?
Well, so that's the whole point of really me being here. But more than that, it's really been a spiritual transformation for me. And so that really opened my eyes, having a connection to the spiritual aspect of my life and realizing, how that's affected me throughout my entire life. And it's given me a new sight, I would say. Yeah. And so it's really important for me to be aware of the stuff that I say and also the stuff that I promote. I really am cautious about the things that I do and the things that I say now. And I want to make sure that what I represent as an individual, but also as a musician and a brand is that is to promote positivity, and body, mind, and spirit, and all those things are extremely important. And so, so that's what I'm doing now. And taking, I've written so much music throughout my life. I started writing music back in 7th grade.
Same.
And, yeah,
that's
really?
The age, yeah.
So I
don't know. It was for me. I feel like that maybe, but yeah.
So I had this. I had a Tascam 4-track tape player. So I used to record to tape, and I only had 4 tracks. So it was like, and then I had a Korg beat synthesizer. So I make these like horrible drum beats, and then I would try and squeeze the vocals onto 2 tracks if I had 2 tracks left. And so that's really where I started. So I've written a ton of music, and I have a ton of music. I just, having that spiritual change. When part of my story will be revealed later, but that spiritual change really directed me into a totally different avenue than where I was headed before, and I want to honor that, and I want to honor what God's done for me in my life, and make sure that He's proud of what I've done.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that's something really interesting where it's, and the two of us have talked about this recently where it's, that old saying of like preach the gospel daily, but use words only when necessary.
Right.
And that is definitely something that I try to carry in my social media posts where it's like, if you look on my page, you don't see a lot of Bible quotes or anything like that. But I know that I try to channel, I wake up every morning and the first thing I do is, a devotional or look at the Bible or something. And so it's like, I always want to make sure that even though you might not be able to tell that it's God focused, there still is that intention behind it of joy and humor and whatever. And what's funny is I've almost had the opposite journey of you, but ending up in the same place where I feel like I was almost like this goody two shoes growing up who thought I had to be a certain way to a certain point, as far as being a public persona and setting a good example. And so part of my journey with being completely and unconditionally loved by God has actually been learning how to present myself more authentically, as far as being a little rough around the edges, my sense of humor being a little dry and even crass at moments, and sort of wanting to bring forward the like not putting this perfect persona out on social media, because that's not me.
Right.
None of us are perfect.
Exactly.
How is that going to help anybody anyways?
Right. Right. And it's like a lot of times, everybody always says this, but a lot of times, you only see the best parts of people on social media. And so,
absolutely.
For me, it's also been really important for me to kind of go back and forth, but also, it's like, because I want it to be as realistic as possible, and I want people to know the real me. I want people to know the real struggles and the real trials and tribulations that I've had. But I also want you to see my wins,
Right.
And I want everybody to be involved in those wins. So it's kind of like, a back and forth, I guess, for me now, and where
Absolutely.
it wasn't like that, prior to having my spiritual transformation. I think that a lot of times I think I wanted the world to see me in a certain light. And now being more conscious and of who I am and what I'm doing, it's both, and it's really everything encompassed into one now, instead of just here are my highlights, like
Totally.
This is what I'm doing, like everything's great, like nobody is perfect. So
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing where social media is so fascinating, because it's like there's a practice of, I know people who have a prayer box where they'll stick their prayers in it, and then maybe like once every 2 months they'll go back and read it as a spiritual exercise to realize, oh, wow, in February, I was so stressed out about this, and now it's such a small problem. And so it's like, not only are you actively praying and connecting to your God, but it also then gives you perspective a couple months later. And I feel like in a weird way, social media can serve the same purpose if you use it, where like, it's so interesting for me as I've been on this journey of like, does God love all of me?
Right.
And I look back even a year ago at how much more curated to a fault my posts were, where I was like, I can feel the fear to this. Like, I'll read a certain post and be like, God, I can feel the fear of, oh my God, am I wording this correctly? What if the post bombs? What if nobody likes me? What if da 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 da?
Yeah.
Versus,
I think everybody has that, though.
Totally.
Every single person is thinking that when they do something,
Yes. And so one of the great things about sort of jumping into social media now is it's like, this might sound so twisted, but it's almost like my version of a prayer box, where like that idea of taking it a little bit less serious, like still wanting to channel God in everything I do, but channel that by just being comfortable in my own skin.
Right.
And so it's so crazy to look at posts like today versus a year ago, even, as I've tried to really hone in on that, where you can just tell that I'm more comfortable right now.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's been an exercise in reminding myself, like, you can have a dry sense of humor and kind of be a goober.
Right.
And
it's
great.
okay.
It's like, bring it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the Miranda Lambert song where the Heart Like Mine, I'm pretty, I know Jesus, he drank wine and I bet we'd get along just fine and all of that. And of like remembering that it's like, we're not saints. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have shown up. Good
Right.
God.
I know.
Like, then what would have been the point? And
Exactly.
so it's, I don't think I'm going to, especially then when you think of it from a missional standpoint, I'm not going to help anyone find God by pretending to be perfect.
Exactly.
I mean.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, this was cool. I've loved sort of talking to you about this like artistic journey. And
Yeah, it's been good.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I was gonna say, so one more thing. What if you had, what would you tell up and coming artists about the journey and how you have been able to kind of surpass or get past some of the hurdles that you've had to deal with? What would you say to them?
Great question. I think the first, I would say, don't take your mistakes. Don't take any one night or one event or one mistake too seriously. If you bomb a show and some record exec is in the audience, it's not the end of your career. If you bomb a co-write, if you whatever, it's no one event is going to be the end of your career. And, so don't live out of a place of fear. Just go for it because you are going to fall down. But all of those stumbles are not only not going to ruin your career, they're just going to make you better. And because I think I lived out of a place of like, oh my God, I have stage fright right now. Or even like the social media posts of like, I don't want to post the wrong thing. And it's like, don't give too much power to believe in the potential that every day holds.
And shine your light.
Yeah.
Shine your light.
Believe in all that potential, but don't give it too much power.
Right.
So I think that because I think that was a big part of my journey of like finding the balance between believing, yeah, this show could change my life. What if somebody does hear me and introduces me to the right person and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it's just a show. Just get up on stage and do your best. And if it doesn't go well, get up tomorrow and do it again.
Right.
Like, and just sort of take a deep breath. So yeah, if that sounds like, in a weird way, it's almost like minimizing the importance of each day in a way, but sort of that kind of like the social media stuff of like when you're out there engaging every day, each individual message or post becomes less important. And I think it's very much the same with the whole career where try to remove the stage fright and all of your panic and just get out there and do it.
Right. Because that's going to make you better at the end of the day, regardless if it's a win or if it's a loss.
And guess what? If that record exec that you bombed in front of then sees you keep going and get better, that's going to be even more impressive.
Exactly.
I mean, there's just so much possibility.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was really awesome.
This was really cool.
This is Lockwood Barr. I'm the 4 and 5 Fortune, and you are tuned in to BackRoads Revival.